Since the IRS has implemented its moratorium on ERC claims in September of 2023, it's collected over $1 billion through its enforcement activities related to the ERC. So $1 billion is a ton of money. So I want to break down exactly where that $1 billion is coming from. So there's a few different buckets that the IRS has told us and is focused on. So first is what's called the Voluntary Disclosure Program. And so I have a whole separate video on what the Voluntary Disclosure Program is, but this is basically an opportunity where a taxpayer raises their hand, voluntarily disclose that, I claimed the ERC, but now that I look at it a little bit more closely, I think I was misled. I don't think the filing was fraudulent. And as a result, I'm walking away from the ERC. And so that has resulted in $225 million of ERC claims that have been voluntarily disclosed and removed. Now, there's also, which is separate, which is called the Withdrawal Program. And this is different from the Voluntary Disclosure Program, where a taxpayer withdraws a certain period. And that withdrawal program has resulted in $250 million savings for the IRS. So that's almost about $500 million right there. And then the IRS has identified over $570 million of claims that were improperly filed, about 22,000 individual orders across about 12,000 entities that were improperly filed, and resulted in $570 million of assessments to improper ERC filing. So those are the three big buckets that the IRS has told us about. And that's just since they've implemented the moratorium in September, and those numbers were released in March of 2024. So now what's really interesting is that the IRS is also focused on intensifying investigations and in criminal enforcement. And criminal enforcement is because of outright fraud. We're talking about identity theft, impersonating a business, or filing for credits when the entity wasn't even in existence in 2020, 2021, making up fraudulent facts, payroll records, and whatnot. So the IRS has stated that they have $3 billion of identified fraudulent transactions, and they've already 386 criminal cases in process. So that number is even more staggering. And so there's a lot of questions about, well, what's going on with the ERC? When am I going to get my check? Well, a big reason that there's been such a massive slowdown is because of this fraud that they have identified. So already we've seen multiple convictions. I think the IRS, the average sentence has been 24 months for these criminal investigations. And at the same time, the IRS is focusing on what they call promoter investigations. In 2023, there were a lot of folks out there who were hammering the phones and basically saying everybody qualifies. All you gotta do is fill out this form and you qualify. And so the IRS Office of Promoter Investigation is focusing on promoters who were they were abusive in nature, and they were improperly promoting the ability of businesses to claim the ERC. So the IRS is going to continue on their criminal and civil enforcement of these unscrupulous promoters and preparers. So there's a lot going on there, but that's where the $1 billion comes from of savings you may have heard. And so the IRS has continued to push back processing new claims. Their moratorium into at least late spring of 2024. And when they do start processing it again, it'll be at a much slower pace than it was previously. So that's the kind of the status of that $1 billion that the IRS has recaptured. And we should expect to see, $3 billion, at least $3 billion more in criminal investigations that are ongoing. So hope that's helpful.